Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Asuma Katauka. Today we discuss Iran, a country on edge. Cities are flooded with protesters, markets are shut, universities face uprisings. The regime is now facing its most serious test since the Mahsa Amini protests, and some say since 1979. What triggered this wave of unrest? How far have the protests spread? How deadly has the response been? And why are the shadows of the US, Israel looming so large? Let's break it down. This round of protests began with the economy. On December 28, Iran's currency crashed again. The Iranian rial plunged to 1.42 million to the US dollar, a new record low. This crash compounded inflationary pressure and pushed up the prices of food and daily necessities. Inflation has hovered above 40% for years. Unofficially, economists say it is closer to 60%. For shopkeepers and merchants, the impact has been devastating. Prices now change daily, customers walk away, profits vanish. The anger first erupted in the bazaars, and that matters. Bazaar merchants are not just traders, they are networked, organized, and historically powerful. From there, the protests spread rapidly. Demonstrators have been reported in Tehran, Mashhad, Shiraz, Yasuj, and Bojnord. More than 180 cities across all provinces have now seen protests. Students soon joined in. University campuses turned into flashpoints. Verified videos show clashes between students and security forces. At one campus, students communicated in code using class chat groups. They set fire to the flag of the Islamic Republic. Authorities then tried to lock them in. Dormitory gates were sealed. Students climbed fences and protested anyway. By the third night, security forces arrived. They first offered talks, then they used batons, pepper spray, and force. The students refused dialogue. They were not asking for reforms. They were calling for the fall of the government. Chants quickly turned political. Protesters shouted death to the dictator and death to Khamenei. Some even called for the return of the Pahlavis, the royal family who were overthrown in 1979. In some areas, mosques were torched. This was a direct challenge to the religious foundations of the Islamic Republic. The cost has been severe. According to a US-based human rights group, at least 78 protesters have been killed, more than 2,600 people have been arrested. Doctors describe overwhelmed hospitals, fearful patients, and bodies brought in amid a widening crackdown. An internet blackout has failed to stop the movement. So how has the regime responded? Iran's president tried a softer approach first. He replaced the central bank governor, he acknowledged public anger, and he announced a monthly subsidy of about $7 for low-income Iranians. Supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has taken a hard line. He has accused protesters of being rioters and mercenaries for foreign powers. His message was clear. The state will not give in. Let's listen in.
یه مش تخریبگر آمدن ساختمان متعلق به کشور خودشون رو خراب کردن. مثلا فرض کنید فلان ساختمان دیواری رو خراب کردن برای که دل رئیس جمهور آمریکا خوش. او دستش به خون بیش از 1000 ایرانی آلوده است. همه بدونن جمهوری اسلامی با خون چند صد هزار انسان شریف روی کار آمده. در مقابل کسانی که تخریبگرند جمهوری اسلامی کوتاه نخواهد آمد که معمولاً مستبدین و مستکبران عالم از قبیل فرعون و نمرود و رضاخان و محمد رضا و امثال اینها وقتی که در اوج غرور بودند سرنگون شدند. این هم سرنگون خواهد شد.
And then came the external pressure. US President Donald Trump has issued multiple warnings. Let's listen in.
So Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over certain cities that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. We're watching the situation very carefully. I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts. And that doesn't mean boots on the ground, but it means hitting them very, very hard where it hurts. So we don't want that to happen. There have been cases like this where President Obama totally backed down. But this is something pretty incredible that's happening in Iran. It's an amazing thing to watch. They've done a bad job. They've treated their people very badly, and now they're being paid back. So let's see what happens. We're watching it. We're watching it very closely.
Israel has also been closely watching events and has long viewed Iran as its primary visual threat. For Tehran, the suspicion is familiar. They see foreign hands and foreign plots. To understand why this moment matters, we have to look back. The United States and Israel have been deeply entangled in Iran's modern history. In 1953, a CIA-backed coup toppled Iran's elected prime minister. In 1979, the Iranian people overthrew a US-backed monarchy on their own. There was no foreign army, there was no invasion. There were mass strikes, there were street protests, and there was martyrdom. The Islamic Republic was born from that uprising. Over time, it became the target of repeated sanctions, isolation, and confrontation. This stretched from the nuclear deal to maximum pressure sanctions, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to years of economic strangulation. Iran now stands at a crossroads. Its population is pushing back, its regime is digging in, and the region and the world are watching closely. This is not just a protest. It is a test of whether a system born from revolution can survive another. For this discussion, we're joined by Mr. Gedalia Blum. He's a Middle East Affairs analyst, joins us live from LA. Thank you very much, Mr. Blum, for joining us on NewsX World. Good to see you. Now, Mr. Blum, when economic collapse rather than a single political incident becomes the trigger, how does that change the trajectory and durability of protest movements in a highly securitized state like Iran?
Well, I mean, I just want to go back a little bit more because this economic collapse, as we talked about there, the currency plummeting, and the shopkeepers saying that it costs more money to stay open than it would be to close. This is what really got them on the streets. But what came first was complete mismanagement over the last number of decades by the Iranian regime. Investing not in water technology and recycling, where we're seeing the reservoirs have been drying up, power stations have been closed down. Complete mismanagement. They are a failed state. While at the same time, just about a month ago, the Iranian regime had promised Hezbollah in Lebanon $1 billion in restoration fees and expenses. So this is where really the priorities were with the regime, was really about building a terror infrastructure with proxies surrounding Israel and going after not only Israel but the West. And so they're looking at a world view, I think, is more of in a space of that water really doesn't matter. What matters is your gateway to paradise, which is to live by this extremist Islamic ideology by any means. So they actually believe that this is actually a righteous cause, while people on the street, as you said, that triggered these protests, are really looking to feed their families. This is like the bread and butter issues that I think it doesn't matter who you are, what you're about. If you look at the future of your children and you're scared because you can't feed them, that's gonna get you activated. And I think that this is really the precursor, I believe, to not a revolution but a restoration from before the revolution.
Thank you for highlighting that. And building on that, historically, bazaar merchants and students have played decisive roles in Iran's revolutions. What makes their convergence today especially threatening to the Islamic Republic's power structure?
Well, listen, I mean, anywhere you go, the young adults, the university students are mostly ideologically driven. They're the most enthusiastic, and we see this all over the world. They generally lead the ideological protests against government for certain issues. But when they align with economic struggles, I think that becomes a recipe for success, because the economics of it is what actually the removal of economic activity from the regime, from the country, starves the regime. But at the same time, you need those people on the street. You need the enthusiasm. So I think that those two together are really what are going to be are going to orchestrate. And we've seen this already. We're almost 2 weeks into the protest. Normally, these protests would not last so long when they were only being driven by the university students, who would be essentially isolated within the university campus, where the regime could actually surround them. Today, you can't surround economic centers. They exist throughout the whole city, throughout the whole country. So it becomes more of a decentralized protest. But again, the students are an integral part of it, because they're the ones that are actually hitting the streets, putting their lives at the on the line, and actually martyring themselves right now. And so so they're those two players, I think, need each other. The economics can't win on its own, and the students we've seen in the past cannot win on its own.
And lastly, and building on that, by repeatedly framing domestic unrest as the result of US or even Israeli interference, which Iran does, how does the Iranian leadership both justify internal repression and risk misreading the scale of genuine popular discontent?
I mean, listen, when you're a fear regime, and there's a peace index.
Yes.
That I think every year they do a survey, and they look at different countries and they rank them in accordance to their likelihood of being in a conflict, in a war. And they actually find that when there comes to two free societies that live next to each other, let's say for instance, the United States and Canada, the risk of war, conflict, is extremely low. It's below 1%. But if you take two fierce societies like the Iranian regime and the Saudi regime, you'd see that the war index is very high, over 90%. And so when you're dealing, and the reason why this is so is because when you have a fierce society like the Iranian regime that oppresses its own people, its model is to create an enemy from outside and to blame all of the troubles of the people on the ground on an external party. And so that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The regime is going along with the dictator playbook 101. Let's blame the great Satan and the little Satan, America and Israel, for all the troubles. And no one's buying it. No one's buying it at all. In fact, the people on the street are actually looking at America and Israel as a solution for them to be able to fulfill their dreams of many generations, to revert back to a free society in which they did have prior to the Islamic revolutionary campaign in the late 1970s.
Right. Thank you for highlighting that. And now, given Iran's unique history of regime change, driven largely from within, what concrete warning signs would indicate that this unrest is approaching a systematic breaking point rather than another suppressed uprising?
Well, I think number one is that the continued blackouts, despite the fact that the internet has been out for more than 60 hours, it is not stopping the protests, as you mentioned earlier in the program. Starlink is active, and that's how we are getting some information from Iran to the world. So the constant boots on the ground of the protesters, and we're hearing also is that the escalation, the burning of mosques, the burning of state institutions, the tax authority building was burned down, and I forget which city. But we're seeing a progression. We're not seeing a regression. It means that the regime is not able to stop the protests. In fact, the protesters are being propelled not only by the words of Donald Trump and the Prime Minister here in Israel, but they're being propelled by the fact that there were early adopters, that the first ones who hit the streets, that were much fewer in numbers. And that the fact that President Donald Trump had warned the regime that if any mass killings were going to be committed, that he was going to step in, which could tie the hands of the regime. And so that gave the early protests more of a sense of success, and allowed those who were fearful at home to actually join the protests, to know that they weren't just going to be rounded up, shot, arrested, and tortured right away. And now we're seeing in many cities hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people marching in the streets, women without their hair covered, men, flying the traditional Iranian flag, burning cars, going after Iranian regime forces, and they're being emboldened. And I think that they have a winning ticket, because right after seeing the takeout of Venezuelan President Maduro by Trump, they're seeing how Trump is very bold and doing things and acting in a way for American interests, but also in the interest of the people on the ground. And I think that the Iranian people are seeing Trump as their golden ticket to really take this across the finish line, which is, again, keeping them on the ground, propelling them to continue to escalate. And I think at this point right now, even Israeli intelligence right now, just recently in the last day or two, assessed that there is a significant chance that these protests will, in fact, succeed in taking down the regime.
We will be eyeing that. Thank you for highlighting that, Mr. Blum. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Gedalia Blum for joining us today from Eli and sharing that insight with us on Deep Dive.